Hello, my name is Joseph Pirayo. I want to welcome you to today's In the Beginning Ashur program. Today we have a very special program. But before I go introduce our guest, as always, this is a live program. If you have any questions, any comments you want to share with us, if you can answer it, we'll do that. And also, we are on X, YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Instagram, and also you can go to assyriatv.org to see the videos, over 5,000 videos. My apologies for these sounds that are coming, there are emails that are coming, I can't get rid of them. But anyway, so today is a special program. We have a special guest that has been with us a few times, and there is no introduction is necessary, but I need to introduce you to Professor Efrem Yildiz, all the way from Salamanca, Spain. Professor Shlama, hello, welcome to Assyria TV.
Tjena och shlama och raba bصيخة وندادي برسا وهاوتن رaba بالسيمة عصريتي في هاوتن رaba بالسيمة لادي برسا.
Thank you very much. So today it's like before we interview you about different subjects, but today you are the professor and you'll be teaching us about some history and linguistics. But before, I have congratulations coming, Professor Ephraim, for your new position. You're the boss of the linguistic, I believe. It's called the full professorship at the national level, University of Salamanca, Spain, in the Hebrew and Aramaic studies. Is that correct?
Yes, but the main issue is not that, but more I'm much more happy and proud of being part of the Assyrian course. So let's put apart our personal, let's say, achievements, which are okay, but I'm thankful to you for mentioning it. Yes.
Thankful for you that you are representing us. That's another thing. You are there representing the nation, and it's very important. The people that represent our nation truly represent our nation, right? So that's why today the subject, we just go over the history. Just tell us that what we'll be covering for the next half an hour or so.
Yes, after so many times that we have had the chance to talk about different topics, I think now it's time to focus on several topics that are needed in order to clarify several concepts that haven't been, in my opinion, explained to the Assyrian community itself, who we are, what we speak, what kind of religious branches we have, and so on. And this is going to be a kind of short class or lectures where we will try to do our best to give answers to several questions. It's not a discussion, but much more, I would say, it's a way of how to explain to the new Assyrian generation those concepts that need an explanation, because there are so many questions today where we don't have a clear answer. And I will try to do my best to answer several questions. And if I don't know them, I will recognize that I don't know them and I will then study them and reply to those questions that I don't manage, for instance. But it's not going to be only Professor Efrem Yildiz who will be giving lectures. Hopefully, other colleagues will be invited to share such values in order to contribute to the Assyrian course as Assyria deserves. So this is the first time we are going to talk about several questions which have to do with the geographical, historical, and linguistic issues that must be clarified in order to give on or to provide the Assyrian society especially, but also the modern society with what is needed to be explained. So thank you for giving us this occasion to talk about these topics. But before starting, I would love to highlight an important point. This has nothing to do with the critics that have been raised in the last time against several persons or public personalities of the Assyrian communities who are linked to the religious side. But I think it's now important to give some, at least some, introduction to those questions that have been explained as a whole for the Assyrian community.
That's great. Another thing is that, Professor, we hear so many different versions. It's like gets confusing. It goes, okay, who are we? Where we came from historically, the names, languages. So there's so many different versions of it. And this lecture that you are giving and your colleagues that will be giving in the future, it would clarify, especially as you mentioned, the young generation that they when you give different uh, parts of the same history that they don't match, these young people that get frustrated, they say, we don't need it, forget it. So you want to bring them back in, exciting, learning, one story, one history, one people. That's the best part that we are very appreciative that have you here. So where are we starting from? Adam and Eve?
We will start from the beginning, let's say. The beginning is quite complicated to explain it in a short time, but due to the fact that we are facing an identity discussion where we are called Syrians, Arameans, Syrian, Syriacs, Chaldeans, and so on. I think the Syrian community deserves an, how would I say, an explanation that must be based on historical progress, on historical development, and not just an interest of what the several leaders have been trying to explain in order to have their, let's say, community protected. So here we are not fighting for specific interests, but we are fighting for an a right which must explain us
Yeah.
who we are, where we come from, what language we speak, and how our history has been developed. We are a nation, for me, which is Assyrian, that has gone through many, many powers since the fall of Nineveh in 612. And I don't know why, but we have been always looking to the foreigners to explain our own history. We have now a huge potential among a Assyrian community that is able to explain it, but we don't make use of it, or we don't make use of them. We have top scholars of ancient history, of middle, late, and modern history. We have top scholars up in ancient period of the language, uh, middle, late, and modern period. Why should we not use them to explain our history as as it's seen was, from an Assyrian point of view? Now it's time that the Assyrian people must have a view that is directly taken from an Assyrian, well learned, well trained scholar that is able to explain not only from a theoretic point of view, but also from inside. Because if you don't feel that history as it's your own, at the end it becomes a kind of, just periods, just dates, just events. But at the end, we don't feel it as ours. And we have to start or to learn to make it ours. We have a history that is almost about 7,000 years. And now a Syrian community, a Syrian nation has the moral obligation to provide its kids with their own history. And this is probably one of the purposes why we are going to start this brief lectures each month. If we are lucky, we will have somebody, or I will try to do my best to contribute to it, to explain several points where we will invite experts, Assyrian experts, to explain our history, our language, our culture, our legacy as a whole.
Yeah, as a whole.
And today we are going to start with the ancient part, okay, where there is a first point as any other culture or a geographical point. They have been started, this one, perfect, uh, in a specific geographical point. The ancient history of Mesopotamia hasn't started like we have been told that there was the creation, and the creation, then after the fall of Adam and Eve, things have changed. Yes, but we have a history. So, and this history goes beyond to any imagination. This is based on what we, from a geographical point, from a historical, and of course, linguistic point of view, is based on the sources we have at our hands. Dikram, please go to the next slide. And here we start. Let's go back 5500 BC, when for the first time we have some city-states that you can see in the map. If you go from the south onward, Basra, which is, and if you see Kuwait, and you see Ur, Uruk, Lagash, Isin, Nippur, Kish, Babylon, then Ashur, Nineveh, Mari, and so on, where you see these city-states that were independent city-states. And then from the fifth or 6,000 BC to the third millennia, they have developed a system that then they were put together as a kind of the imperial system was for the first time invented or built by the Assyrian kings like Sargon the Great. Okay, all the city-states were gradually included in a system that were conditioned by the two important issues: protection on one side, but also contribution to the other. So old Mari, Kish, Babylon, Nippur, Isin, Uruk, Ur, Nineveh, and so on, Ashur, Hatra, and so on, Nutsi, they were under the control of a heat. At the beginning, there were different heats, and from different heats, we moved to a heat, a central heat, who was controlling and dominating or ruling, better said, these different heats. This is why we talk about the Assyrian, let's say, system that invented the imperial system. This has supposed several changes throughout the history. From the city-states, we moved to the kingdoms, and from kingdoms to the imperial system. And during this imperial system, we have gone through many changes. The conquer processes, now you can shift to the next one, Assyrian expansion and the deportation policy, please, Dikran. Here you can see from the let's say, Assyrian Empire onward, we are talking about 950 BC onward, where there is even a bigger policy to include many other kingdoms that go beyond what was the Mesopotamian area itself. And that policy has supposed many new issues that must or need or deserve an explanation. What happened from this period onward? Assyrian policy was expanding, and those city-states or kingdoms that were not accepting the conditions of this policy were submitted to a kind what we call geluta, deportation. And this deportation policy has also, at the beginning, it was very effective, but it has it also has supposed several changes for the imperial policy itself. And one of the challenges was the language. Until then, the unique language, the imperial language written with the cuneiform script, with the syllabic system, was the Assyrian language. And due to the policy of the deportation, a new language, which was at the beginning transmitted in a dialectal way, several dialects were used from different city-states, then we will focus on later on, have become a kind of a second option for the imperial interests. And this is what we call the Imperial Assyrian Aramaic. This second language, which is transmitted through a system, writing system, is consonantic, which means with letters, and not syllabic one. And it has a different structure of what the ancient Imperial Assyrian language was based on. What we can see now from the, let's say, from the 10th century BC until the 8th century, there is a kind of, this second option of a second language, which was developed, by the way, in Assyria, nowhere else. Okay? Those people who think that the Aramaic language was developed as imperial mean in earlier stages is wrong. The so-called Aramaic imperial language, for me, is an Assyrian imperial mean that has been really developed in Nineveh, in Ashur itself, okay, as a common mean for the administrative purposes. And then when the Persians, the Achaemenids, Elamites, Medes, with the help of the Babylonians, they came to the power. What they did was using those means that were still implemented in the Assyrian policy itself for centuries. So it became not from the Persian period onward as a kind of imperial communication mean, but it was even before the Achaemenids were at the power. Can you go to the next slide, please? Here, as you can see, Assyria, Babylon, there are other in the south. I have just signed it, where there are three tribes, Bidakuri, Bitamukani, who were living in the territory that was officially designated to the south, please. Yeah, and south onward. Yeah, exactly. Bidakuri, Bitamukani, Bityakin, who end up with the Persian Gulf. Here, there were three tribes that later on were called Chaldean tribes or Kasdim tribes. These tribes have had a big influence in the Babylonian policy itself, but they were never at the power as some people have supposed. Okay? What I mean was this: from the south to the north, and then if you go to the west, where Syria is, you will see. Can you move Dikram, please, to the west? Yeah, here. There you can see several city-states that were totally absorbed by the Assyrian imperial policy. You can see Kwe, Patina, Bit Adini, Elush, Hamad, Soba, Aram-Geshur, and many other cities-states that were included in the Assyrian big geographical empire. So why I'm showing you this geographical points? Because several times I have had the impression that when we talk about these names, our people do not know what we are talking about and where are they located. This is why the confusion of many of our people, Aramaic, Aramean, Aramean Empire, Chaldean, and so on. This and that. What happened is, so far there was a city-state that were not accepting the same conditions. They were moved from one geographical point to the other. So at about 3 million people were moved from their original home to another one in order to ensure some kind of stability and not coming back to fight against those people who were against the Assyrian imperial system. As you can see here, uh, it's clearly a kind of interests because there was a system. If you want to feed your power, you need tributes, you need taxes, and if you were not going to pay the taxes that the ruler was asking for, you were removed from your original home. But that has supposed a kind of new thing that probably at the beginning the Assyrian society itself didn't count on. The simple fact of the simplicity of a language that uses a writing system based on the 22 letters or 27, okay, in comparison with 613 or 632 syllables that are used in order to write correctly in cuneiform script. Of
That's a big
course, this
difference.
was,
That's a
pardon?
big difference.
Oh,
22
yes.
letters and 600 symbols. Yeah, it's amazing.
If I would ask to any of you to choose between the two of them, of course, each of us would choose the simplest one. And this was also one of the main reasons why this language, or the Aramaic dialectal language, was developed in Assyria as its second language. Because if you compare the Imperial Aramaic language with the dialects of previous period, you would see there is a huge difference between the Imperial developed in Assyria than the one which was used in Kwe, Patina, Bit Adini, Bit Zamani, Hamad, uh, Sova, Geshur, and so on. So this is only for those who now claim to have an Aramean identity. All the city-states were totally absorbed by the Assyrian imperial policy. They were thinking as Assyrians, they were living as Assyrians. They were worshipping Assyrian gods. They were even from an identification process onward, they were totally integrated in the Assyrian system. So those who want to create now the Aramean identity in this sense, mm, I don't know how to explain it, but they
They
lay.
don't have any foundation to build on. They're just saying it,
There is
but
no Aramean emperor system at all during the history. Now, going to the next policy, as I showed you, now this map shows you how this Assyrian policy was taking place, how from where to and to where these people moved, were deported. Okay, and as you can see, several of them were deported to the heart of Assyria. This is why we have from 721st one onward a Jewish community in Ashur, in Nineveh. Okay, and then in the 6th century as well. So this is why the Aramaic language has had the chance to be developed as a communication mean, not in Hamat or Damascus or Bit Adini, but in Nineveh itself, in Ashur itself. So if we want to make justice to the history, this language should be called Assyrian Aramaic and not just Aramaic. Okay? So as you can see, according to the several periods, these deportation processes were taking place. Many people were taken from one side to the other, or from one geographical point to the other. And at the end, we ended up with a kind of, you can go to the next slide, geographical point of view. If you see the green part, this was the imperial territory that was conquered by and also administrated by the Assyrian rulers. And you can imagine how many things were developed. You know what I don't like, especially when the people they qualify us as people who are only fighting. We have given to many of these people culture.
Yeah.
They were educated thanks to the Assyrian policy, and nobody underlines that. So this is why it's important to highlight the what Ashurbanipal, next slide, did, and how he managed to have a huge territory under his control. And nobody says that the Ashurbanipal library was one of the best ever libraries that the history has had. More than 32,000 volumes were there. How can a culture have such volumes and be qualified only with being people conquering, killing? This is the way or the wrong way how the history has been transmitted upon the Assyrians. So let's also do justice to the Assyrian history as it deserves. Now, what happened with all this people? What happened? Why do we speak now about Syriac, Aramean, Chaldean? All these the denominations are fruit of a battle between the church leaders. Let's be clear.
Like
Of
this one.
course, they have to do with the Assyrian community itself, or the Assyrian nation, but not as national issues, but part of the Assyrian nation. They belong to the religious part or to the linguistic. That's why when we say we speak Aramaic, it's because we want to have Christ with us. Because if Christ spoke Aramaic, then whoever could represent us in the world better than Christ? This is a sign of complexity of the Assyrian communities that want to show to the world that they are educated people. That's first thing. Second, Syria or Syriac. Where does it come from? Syriac, for sure, it's linked to the Assyrian root because in the ancient time, foreigners were calling us with some our neighbors, for example, the Hittites or Luvids, were calling us Sur. Sur is the synonymous of Ashur in many texts. I don't know what happened was the Zoom. Hello.
You are
Yeah.
on. You're
Yeah.
on.
No, I'm on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but linking Syriac to only a religious denomination that is linked to the so-called Syriac national movement, which is supported by Syriac Orthodox church members, or not all of them, okay? So it's also a misleading term. What we have to do is to focus on a unique name. Assyria is our nation. Assyria is our homeland, and Assyria is based in a concrete geographical point, okay, where we can say, here is Assyria, here is the Assyrian language, whether it has Aramaic structure or not, that's another point we'll talk about. So, but this confusion has been also seeded by the Greeks when they arrived in, we should have gone probably in a much more methodic way when the Achaemenids conquered the whole region, then they were also conquered by the Greeks, and the Greeks started talking about Syrioi instead of Assyrioi. Indeed, in the later sources, Strabo and so on, they clearly underline that there is a mistake calling the Assyrians Syrioi. So from Euphrates was some kind of definition of what Syrioi and Assyrioi was, because from the Euphrates inside was Assyria, and the other part was called in a wrong way by the Greeks Syria, and it has been also kept during the Roman Empire. This is why the region or the Assyrian Empire, the Roman Empire system was based on the districts. And this is why when during the first period, we can see even in the maps, but I will talk about that later on, where the Roman Empire is clearly distributed in many districts. There is also Assyria, where its heartland is actually located. But we weren't aware of such divisions even in the second century after Christ. And this division was kept when we accepted or we embraced the Christian faith, where we were called the so-called Syrian or Syriac Christian, because from Syria, Antioch was the center from where the Christianity spread, and a Christoi, which is linked to the Christ, it was stronger than your own national identity. This one, Aramean. Aramean, of course, it has only to do with the language. Those who defend an Aramean nation, they are absolutely wrong. What we do is during the Assyrian Empire, we implemented two languages, and when the Achaemenids, as I told you before, conquered the whole area, they just used the language that was in use in and within the Assyrian Empire. So nothing was created from zero. 2 centuries before that, this language was the second language of the Assyrian Empire itself. So Sargon II was bilingual. And
Right.
this was also a mean of being instructed in different languages. But Sargon, we know, was 100% security that he managed the so-called Imperial Aramaic and Assyrian Imperial language, both in a natural way. We know what it means being bilingual today, but at that time it was a challenge. Okay, so saying that due to the fact that the Assyrian people speak Aramaic, because if we don't speak, we don't call it Aramaic, and then we don't know how to link it to the Christ, he was also Aramaic speaking. This is, in my opinion, a sign of a complex that we have to now quit, because the language is one issue, and having a territory, having a nation, having a people that consider themselves Arameans is totally different. So we are Assyrians, we speak Assyrian Aramaic, as there are different Aramaic languages that were created due to the Greek policy, that due to the fact that the Greeks in the 4th century they started a policy based on implementing and imposing the Greek language. Isolated zones, geographical zones, started using the Aramaic or the Imperial Syrian Aramaic language in a way that then it developed in an independent and separate way. This is why we talk about Mandin, okay, Palmyrene, Assyrian, Surat, Syriac, and so on, or even Galilean. This is the latest stage on where we are going to talk about the Western and Eastern, let's say, languages that were created due to this Greek policy that started imposing the Greek language. But now, if you see Orhai, Edessa, and Antioch, which was a big center for the Greek cultural and also military issues. Edessa is very close to Antioch, and it was a Syrian Aramaic movement there. Indeed, what we write as writing system today, Strangela, it was a development of the Palmyrene that is based also on the Assyrian imperial script that then was used in Osrhoene kingdom, that is an Assyrian kingdom, by the way, and that has given rise to the so-called Strangela script, and that we were using until the 7th and 8th century as main script. Then, due to the separations, the West and East groups developed the different cursive scripts, Sorota and Sorto, and since then we have these two, let's say, cursive scripts. I don't know. I think now it's time to finish because I don't know what I have responded to your questions. But
Yeah,
this is,
it's what one thing that you mentioned that when they refer to Aramaic connecting us to Jesus is that when there is a lot of repetition and nobody's challenged on the wrong information that is being given because we didn't know. When you don't know, you say, "Oh, okay, Aramaic. Jesus spoke Aramaic, Aramaic, Aramaic." Next thing you know, everybody's saying Aramaic. But once the truth is out there, now we have to replace that with the truth, right? So this is
of
where you're
course.
coming from, Professor, and that's as you mentioned for today. We are very good. It's a start, and it's a very strong start, starting from way back in time and our history. Professor, I forgot to tell you earlier, but can you share with us what's happening in Berlin next week?
Well, next week we are going to have a congress upon several topics, and one of them is also about the genocide, the language, and so on. And yes, the Assyrian scholars are doing many things, but the Assyrian community do not know about that. It's a huge initiative undertaken by Professor Shabot Talai, who is, inviting several top scholars, and many people are going to participate in several panels where we talk about language, literature, but also genocide issues. And I will be there, and I'm very happy to be there because you will learn a lot of things from other scholars that are participating and contributing. So yes, and also we are going to have, if you allow me to mention it, from the 6th, 7th, and 8th of October, also another important congress here at the University of Salamanca, the fourth Congress of Nineveh Academic Chair, that will talk about Assyrian language, history, and continuity. This is going to be one of the issues in order to show to those who deny the continuity of the Assyrians even after the fall of Nineveh, the capital of Assyrian Empire. So until today, all everybody is invited, and I will be more than happy having you here among us. And Assyria TV will be, by the way, participating.
That's great. I'm glad that you mentioned that also. So in Berlin, when the discussions or talks are happening, what language is that that you will be communicating with people?
In
Be-
English, most of the communications are in English, yes. In such big congresses, the main language that is used is usually
Most
English.
popular.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In our case, we have English and, of course, Assyrian, modern Assyrian language as the two language that can be used.
yeah, and I believe Assyria TV is going to be there, and we're going to be live streaming it. Correct? Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
of course. I count on Assyria TV because they are professionals who are doing a huge job, and especially in an objective way. And this is the best way to do a good job for the Assyrian community. And therefore, I'm thankful to the Assyria TV staff, especially to Dikran, who is doing a huge job spreading the knowledge in an objective way and giving us the chance to also to convey what we have been learning, what we have been training in it, and to also, because it's our moral obligation, to communicate what we have learned to, especially to our fellows. So, and Assyria TV is one of the best means to arrive to different Assyrian communities around the world.
Yeah, it's reaching out so many different countries, and we are anyway. It's a big deal, especially for me to be part of this. Of course, since Assyria TV will be in Berlin next week, I will not be on next week, so you guys can take a vacation from me. Be happy. But Professor, before we finish, one last thing share with our audience. So before we say goodbye to them.
Last thing, I'm going to say it in my mother tongue. كل خمدها وبحبها وحيادة. If we work in this way, then we will achieve our dream to have a united Assyrian nation, a united Assyrian people, and fighting in the way that a nation deserves. Assyria needs especially a special part of what is sacred for us, regaining our identity as a nation, recovering our territory as a nation with the time, and especially mastering our language. En leidich lishanen lieben jedoch many achnen. Ad lelishana mitayut lenasht. Ama yelpet lishanoch adi ad rachshud bi tutoch wahayayut.
Professor Basim Araba, we are at the end of the program. Thank you again for sharing with us your knowledge, and we will continue that hopefully in the next few months. Every few month or so, we have your lecture. Until then, Chaya Ashur, Chaya Ashur Chaya, Shimid Ashur Mabqila. Thank you, Abiton Ra Basim. Shumshan.
وخيوت نختل.
شيخاني